Happy Monday, everybody, and welcome to this spoiler review for The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 3 from the
Geek Buddies! Hey!
We are back at it to have a fun conversation here on a Geek Bite for the Geek Buddies, breaking down this latest episode from The Last of Us that dropped last night on HBOMax. It's called The Path. It's directed by Peter Hoare, H-O-A-R. I hope I'm saying that right. He directed episode 3 of the last season as well. So maybe he's the guy to go to for episode 3s of these seasons of this show. Done a number of things here and a number of TV shows as well. But Shannon, this was a transitional episode coming out of the death of Joel, coming out of what Ellie witnessing that, Dina getting drugged and knocked out. And we go through a bunch of time jumps here. 3 months, the initial beginning we see that's right afterwards, and then a 3-month time jump. And then clearly we go through a time, not necessarily a time jump, but we don't see them traversing from Jackson Hole to Seattle, which I think is like 800 some miles, 870 miles. So that's a lot of days, a lot of weeks that we don't see them as well. But the entire episode leads us to Ellie and Dina going after Abby and the wolves there, and us as viewers realizing they're about to bite off more than they can chew. And having dealt with the council, with Seth helping them out, and Tommy dealing with the loss of his brother, a lot more was in this episode, in this deceptively chill but still harrowing episode going into the rest of the season. What do you think of this episode here, Shan?
I mean, I really enjoyed it. Watching the behind the scenes after the episode with Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. I mean, they kind of reiterated the vibe that I got from it was this is the type of thing that's sort of like taking a breath, having some character development. This is the type of thing that the TV series provides that the game doesn't. Like the game tends to be a little more action forward. So a level where everyone is just sort of processing their grief after this attack that's happened. That doesn't make for the most captivating gameplay, but for an audience to get us to let us watch it, I thought it was very, very effective. I mean, from moment one, watching how specifically Tommy and Ellie are reacting to the loss of Joel, to the effect that the infected attack has had on Jackson. There was some beautiful work here, and like I know the show has gotten a little bit of critique from some folks in the audience who feel that Bella Ramsey is a little irritating, but at the same time, it's like this is a kid. I mean, this is a kid processing this grief. I mean, everyone was a teenager at one point and everyone thought they knew everything. And she's kind of going through the same thing. And I think looking at the way she is dealing with this from the moment that she wakes up in the hospital all the way to where she and Dina are on their way to Seattle, you see the way that a child is kind of processing this loss. I mean, there are so many specific moments that, we'll touch on when we get into it. But I thought this was really good. I mean, this is the type of episode that I feel like you need to sort of take a breath, recalibrate, take stock of what we've lost and see what we can maybe gain. So, I mean, I was a big fan of this, and I thought there was a lot of great performance in this, especially from Catherine O'Hara.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of excellent points here, Shannon. I agree. And this is you and I have watched enough television to know these are the dangerous episodes. That episode right after all the big stuff happens, right after a massive death happens, you can easily fall into this trap where it starts to feel repetitive or boring, or it starts to be like, oh, they're just clearly wading water because they had to put an episode in here between this and starting off their next phase. But there was much more going on here in a commentary on Ellie and how she was reacting to the death of Joel. As you said at the beginning, we basically see her and Tommy, which we're going to talk about, like dealing with and processing it in their own way. But later, we see how much of a force she is, Ellie, in terms of getting what she wants. And that conversation, I think, between Tommy and Gail at the T-ball park or wherever that is, where they're all trying to institute some level of normalcy. Meanwhile, these clickers are right outside the gates. I think there's a lot in that back and forth between the two of them that is a window into who Ellie is as a person. And Gail, who is, as she said, 40 years of psychotherapy, saying that some people just can't be saved. It's a real indictment on Ellie. So that's an interesting character development and a forward movement of that character for us to consider as we go forward. Beautiful moments and friend moments with her and Dina, which I think is great. She, as I said last week, she's essentially going to be the new Joel for Ellie, and they'll figure things out as they go along. Tommy in the town, I think that's the council. There was a lot that the show was saying. It was letting us grieve for Joel, which I think is really great. As Druckmann, I think Druckmann said that, or Mason said that, but also it was showing you that not just Joel died, and I think Mason said that in the after show thing as well, where he said, like, sometimes in shows they focus on the main characters dying, but like a lot of people died. So how would a town react to that if they lost their favorite person in the world, their person who had done a lot for the town, their person who had been there with them for years? How would they react? And sending 16 people, it's like a hell of an ask. So I really enjoyed that this episode brought up a lot of logical conflicts that would occur in a situation like this. And I thought they really delivered, and then left us with a very chilling end moment, seeing the size of the force that they are going to go up against here, man. It's almost like a reverse where like the 5 of the wolves showed up to Jackson Hole and realized they were totally outmatched, everybody except Abby. And then, and now Ellie and Dina are walking into essentially the same situation where they're a small number versus what looks to be a very capable and armed force that will kill, as we saw with the cult members. So very interesting stuff, Shannon. But we should say, so apologies to everyone. Michael Vogel cannot join us today because he is feeling under the weather. And if he's under the weather, he's legitimately under the weather. That guy, I've seen him power through so many things. But he's gotten COVID twice at the same time. So the fact that he is sick, it tells you something. He's really sick. But let's start with the beginning here. I don't have a picture of Ellie in the hospital, but we see her reacting to the death of Joel, reliving it as if it's happening in front of her. And Bella does an incredible job with that scream right at the beginning as she wakes up and they have to sedate her. And then we see this beautiful moment of Tommy coming in and washing his brother's body, cleaning his brother's body for his burial. And I mean, Shannon, let's just stop. I just want to talk about these two moments before the credits hit. Like, what did you think of the beginning of how they're introducing Ellie, and then how they're showing Tommy having this like wonderful moment here with his brother and saying goodbye to his brother?
I mean, the moment with Tommy was absolutely, I mean, both moments were heartbreaking, but
Yes.
Tommy, having been conscious through the whole thing, add in the fact that this battle that took place, and it culminates in almost the worst way possible, in that he's lost his brother who
Yeah.
they were separated for years, and it took a
Right.
minor miracle
Yes.
for them to be reunited, and now he's gone.
Mhm.
And that moment where you see just sort of the covered face of Joel, and we see the watch. It really
Yeah.
reminded me, like, if anyone has been to a funeral, been to like a wake or a viewing,
Mhm.
there is that moment, like when my father passed away, that was like I had a moment in private by myself, and
Yeah.
it is very, I recognize those faces. I don't know if Gabriel Luna has lost someone in real life,
Hmm.
but you recognize that moment where there's no words that can be said. You're sort of
Yeah.
processing the reality of this person is gone, but I'm alive and I have to keep going. And
Right.
so again, just really recognizing the humanity that that Gabriel Luna brought to that. Going over to Ella, I mean, again, it's the same thing. You, as someone who's lost someone as well. I mean,
Yes. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
Ellie was conscious when Joel was
Right.
killed. I mean, she watched it happen. She watched the light leave his eyes. So for her to wake up in the hospital, like getting some medical care, there is that moment again. I mean, my closest person that I've lost was my father. And there were
Mhm.
definitely those moments where you wake up and you think for half a second, oh, it was a dream. That wasn't
Yeah.
real. And as Ellie wakes up and realizes this horrible thing that she witnessed wasn't a nightmare, that did
Yeah.
happen, it just kind of resets all of that shock and all of that sadness and all of that trauma. So I thought Bella Ramsey's performance was outstanding. And
Mm.
again, having not played the game, not knowing how much is actually shown for an audience, I felt that this was incredibly, it hit incredibly close. I mean, and
Yeah.
that's not to say that you have to have lost someone to relate, or at least to appreciate the the work that went in between
Yeah.
Gabriel Luna and Bella Ramsey. I mean, again, it was just a very, very moving and very sad sequence of events.
Yeah, I would agree, man. Uh, the loss of Joel hangs over this entire episode, and that opening is meant to, for you as the audience, to feel that anger and rage and shock and horror one more time, and also to really appreciate Tommy's love for his brother, which we didn't get a lot of time with in the show, right? I think there's probably more of it in the game, but we didn't get a lot of it in the show. We only had a couple episodes last season, and then like the opening episode with them. And they had some issues, right? Even the first episode of this season back, there was like, well, if you know Joel, you know how Joel is. There's this kind of like, it's best to just give him his way. So there is a kind of begrudging acceptance of Joel's battering ram type personality in his life, and he's accepted it. But that doesn't mean he ever wanted his brother dead. And so, all those years they've been away from each other, as you mentioned. So him finally repairing this relationship and getting a chance to kind of uh, reunite with Joel and run the town a bit with Joel and Maria and others. I mean, there's just something really powerful in that. And remember, Joel is the one that wanted him to grow up, wanted him to get better, wanted him to have more responsibility, wanted him to step up. And here he finally steps up, and now Joel has gone. So it's a very interesting thing with Tommy. And I think throughout the episode, certainly later when Tommy's telling Ellie and Dina that they got to go through the council, I think Tommy 5 years ago doesn't do that. I think Tommy's strapping a horse and going with Ellie and whatever, but this is a different Tommy now. And so there's a lot of the echoing of that. And I love the way he, washes his brother's body. There's something really intimate in that. We've seen that like all the way from the Bible to nowadays about preparing a body for burial and the honor of that and the care and meticulous attention. So there's something beautiful in that. I thought that respected Pedro Pascal's performance and the character of Joel in this entire world, and as they've transferred it from the video game, which I thought was great as well. Yeah, so after the credits, we find out there's been 3 months. Shannon and I mentioned the time jumps that happen in this episode. 3 months since Joel's passing, the community is rebuilding. We see them, Jesse and Tommy knocking things in. Ellie has recovered her physical health because obviously that must have been a hell of a toll it took on her to endure all of that. And she's getting checked out, but she has to talk to Gail first, which I think is a fun little moment. Gail presses her about Joel saying he wronged her, and she smiles when Gail tells her that Joel said he saved her. What does the smile mean? So interesting. Then Ellie heads home, walks through Joel's rooms in the house leading up to his bedroom, and then cries into his jacket, which I thought was really beautiful. Then Dina arrives and tells her the details about the wolves, the Washington Liberation Front out of Seattle, over some cookies. So let's deal with this section, and we'll move on to the other stuff here in just a second. What did you think about how they handled Ellie waking up from the thing back to her precocious self and rebellious self, and the way she's trying to play Gail in that moment before she walks out, and her interactions with Dina and crying over the jacket here, man?
Well, I mean, even starting just a little bit before that, the moment that Tommy has with Jesse, like, a lot was talked about how Joel is an old man and everything. And after, it's been 3 months, you see that Tommy is getting older as well. Like he doesn't have the strength that he used to have. And you see how Jesse sort of, it's totally unspoken, but sort of like, you want me to give this a try, and you see him hammering those stakes in, because he's got the strength of a younger man. I mean, going over to Ellie, and you see the back and forth with the doctor about what's your pain, the scale from 1 to 10, nothing, it's nothing. And you see she is champing at the bit. I mean, she is she's been cooped up for so long, and she is going to say anything that she needs to get out of that room. I like the time jump. I like that they did that 3 months past, because one, you get the, spring has come. It's rebirth. Everything's green. The snow and the desolation and all those charred bodies that we saw in the first section, those are gone. It's Jackson trying to repair itself. But even with Ellie, I mean, Ellie is she still grieving? 100%. Is she grieving in that moment? No, because she wants to get out of that room. There will be more grieving that will come once she is outside those four walls that have kept her cooped up. But the back and forth with Catherine O'Hara, I mean, it's really interesting when a character dies who has a secret, and how that secret is going to be revealed, if it's ever going to be revealed. I mean, the only person that knew, the one who knows the truth of what happened is Abby. So knowing, like, and again, I don't know where the story's going. I didn't play the game. So it's like, okay, at some point, that nugget of information is going to come out. So keeping it alive, like the addition of Catherine O'Hara's character, her basically saying, what do you think that meant? Like, saving someone isn't wronging someone. But as Ellie leaves, how the camera holds on her as she's walking down that hallway, you see that mask of "I'm okay" start to slowly fade away. And when she gets inside Joel's house, it completely vanishes. You know, that touching of the clothes, you know, smelling the jacket. You know, it's wild how much of our scent will stay on things after we've gone. And so again, it's just a very, very emotional moment, and another great performance by Bella Ramsey in this section.
What'd you think of her and her and Dina having the conversation over the cookies about the wolves? And she was like, "You wasted precious time. How could you delay this?" Like, this is also like to counter the crying on the jacket, which was a really beautiful moment of her expressing her real emotions privately. What did you think of the back and forth with Dina? Did you expect that to explode, or did it go the way you kind of anticipated that it would go?
I think it would have exploded 3 months ago.
Great point.
I think having the time, is she not thrilled about the fact that Dina waited? Of course not. But some of that fire, some of that anger, it has receded a little bit. It's going to come back. It is 100% going to come back. But for the moment, that fire isn't burning as bright. That particular fire isn't burning as bright. What's interesting is Dina having all this information about them, like, and I'm like, that was a quick amount of time. That I like the fact that she remembered all of these names and she saw the WLF. Again, not knowing a ton of Dina's backstory, I'm kind of like, does Dina know more than she's saying here? Like, I don't know. I'm probably incorrect, but that's something that I was like, the fact that she knows everyone's name. She was unconscious for a large section of that moment in the lodge, but the Ellie pushing the cookies back. I mean, I thought that was done really well, and Isabella Merced is a great addition to this cast.
Yes, yeah. I have to, you know, the stuff with Ellie. I love the way she's negotiating and with Gail, because what we see later with Gail and Tommy, again, I think this is a really critical conversation they had. It's a window into this relationship between the two of them. I think Gail still holds a lot of anger towards Joel and Ellie as an extension of what happened to her man, Eugene, right? There's a lot of unfinished business there. I think she was questioning Ellie for more than just Ellie's health and sanity. I think she was questioning Ellie because she wants answers. She wants to know. And Jesse alluded to it last episode, the way Eugene died, it wasn't the greatest. And you saw that Ellie had a bit of a guilty look on her face. So there's more here. And, you know, Gail to me is becoming a suspicious character as the episode goes along. I don't want to jump the gun here, but like, I just noticed the interaction with her and Ellie, it seems like she's interrogating her and then realizes that Ellie isn't going to give her anything and then lets her walk out. And you're right. The facade drops and we see who she really is and how she's really dealing with stuff. And, you know, as you mentioned earlier, a lot of people coming after Bella Ramsey. I think there's a damn good performance in this episode. That's why you cast someone with this kind of talent, you know, and her emotion and her feelings, and even the back and forth with her and Dina at the tables, you know, the cookies back and forth and the relationship that's developing, the belief that she has with Dina. And she's actually, I think if she didn't have feelings for Dina or respect for Dina, she'd absolutely tore her apart and kicked her out of the house. But the fact that she does have respect and that Dina knows how to deal with her, like bringing her cookies ahead of time, knowing she's going to upset her, like she knows how to deal with Ellie. And that's another way that you know you have a good friend, is they know exactly how you're going to react. Even though that bothers you initially, They know what you're going to do, so they're trying to deliver information in the best way that you can receive it. And I like that they've got this a little bit, but her reaction immediately is to jump down and throw it, and Dina's not having it. She's got her own belief in herself, her own strength. She's capable. I think there's a possibility that Dina was a soldier or raised by a soldier in the past and was trained to be aware of stuff when stuff goes down. And so I wonder if that's why she's able to know that. But then again, Shannon, you might be right. There might be something more to Dina that we don't know about. We see in the preview for the next episode that she is pointing a gun at Ellie for whatever reason. And so it's curiouser about what that all is. And how did she know exactly in Seattle where they were? Had the map out? We see that later. So there's questions here about Dina a little bit for those of us who haven't played the video game like you and I. So it's very interesting to see where they go with it.
Yeah, and you folks who have played the video game and you know exactly where it's going, you're like, oh, these two idiots. They
don't spoil it. Yeah. So all right. So they make the decision to do this thing, and they're gonna try to enlist Tommy. But Tommy, as you mentioned, Shannon, Tommy's older now. Tommy maybe not as willing to get out there, not as gung-ho as he would have been in his younger days. Plus, he has a wife and a child and responsibilities in the town. He tells them that they've got to go and present it to the council. And Ellie starts to do like a little politicking later on with Jesse, where she's like punching the bag and then saying like, hey, by the way, you're on the council. So, and then Jesse's like, no, I don't sell my vote or anything like that. But later we have them at the council here, and we hear exactly what one of the main through lines of this particular episode is that there are more people than Joel here who were hurt, who were damaged. This is a town that is still in a rebuilding phase. Most of the people who speak up are not in support of this idea of sending 16 people to attack the wolves for Joel and what have you. And then Ellie stands up and delivers a speech here that is clearly pre-written because Tommy told her to write it out so that she wouldn't get emotional and wouldn't get too far, wouldn't make it all about vengeance. She claims that it's all about justice to the council members who end up voting. And by the end here, after we hear from the townsfolk and the council members, they turn her down pretty hard. It's not a close vote, really, considering how many people voted. And only 3 people voted yes, I think. And I think one of them was not Jesse. And so this is an interesting situation. So what do you think about Tommy telling them to go to council? What do you think about them dealing with the council? And what is what's going on with this guy? What is the deal with this dude? Because he didn't seem to be into the situation with Ellie going. He's got feelings. He's back. As we find out later, he's back with Dina. But the council member stuff. What are your thoughts here, Shane?
I mean, Tommy, like I was thinking about that. They had 3 yes votes. And the 3 people that we know on the council are Tommy, Maria, and Jesse. I'm with you. I don't think Jesse voted yes. I think Tommy did.
Yes.
I think Tommy definitely did. Maybe Maria. But listening to everyone's reasoning when they open it up to the town, the guy who wants to plant corn. I mean,
that's the Park and Rec episode. That was so great.
That's one of those moments that. Does this serve a purpose? No, but it's really funny.
Yes.
And it just sort of like you get an idea of not everyone in the town necessarily knew Joel. They knew who he was, but they didn't necessarily know him. And this guy who's just kind of like, yeah, by the way, turkeys are actually better than chickens. Like the guy was so folksy. But that's one of those moments. I'm glad you left that in. Because I think that kind of releases it's a pressure valve release before you get to the meat of the scene. I mean, the woman who stood up basically saying like, I lost people too. Joel's not the only one who died. Now you're talking about taking 16 people. Like this is a bad idea. The next guy was Carlisle. I think he's the older guy. I think he spoke the most sense. Because he's just like, look, we're supposed to forgive because that's what separates us from them. And even though he didn't necessarily say this, I mean, I don't know if I'm reading into his headcanon, but in my mind's eye, I'm kind of like the reason they came and killed Joel is because Joel killed one of them. You send these 16 people out, they're going to kill someone. Someone else is going to this is a never ending cycle of trying to get revenge slash justice. Like
Right.
if someone doesn't stop, it will keep going forever until
Yep.
everyone is dead.
The cycle. Yep.
And
100%.
yeah, but then and Ellie's speech, Ellie, that was a great speech. And also
Yep.
watching the way that Seth reacted, this guy who we're introduced to
Yes.
as a bit of a drunken bigot.
Yeah.
And now you see, you know, we don't know a ton about him, but we see over the past 3 months, again, the fallout of the attack. He has, at least we're led to believe, his point of view has maybe shifted.
Yeah.
Um, but Ellie's speech I thought was great. I'm like, that was the great thing about this show is that there is no black and white. I mean, this is
Mhm.
all shades of gray.
Yeah.
And watching the color drain from Ellie's face as those yes votes get tallied up, and it's more and more and more and more and more. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But again, the whole scene was just incredibly dynamic, incredibly well shot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even though we don't get a ton of action in this episode,
Yeah.
this is character building done right, because it's character building that makes us lean forward in our seats.
Yeah, agreed. And just like when we see Gail and Tommy talking over T-ball, and T-ball is in essence trying to create some level of normalcy amidst the madness. So is having someone in here talking about crops and chicken and turkeys and all this kind of shit. Because that's people would do. There would absolutely be somebody amidst all the madness who'd be like, well, he's like the Cliff Clavin of the town with all these useless fucking facts, but he would absolutely be there. As I said, I called it like a mini Parks and Rec moment. I thought it was great to show, and the fact that they shut him down and told him to sit down, I thought that was hilarious. But you're right to point out other people speaking up to talk about and then was that one guy stood up and was like, we need to offer mercy. And he's like, well, Seth's like, well, what mercy? But that's the point. You're supposed to offer mercy when you want to commit revenge. That's what makes offering mercy so powerful if you do that. And so, but clearly Seth, who was probably damaged because he's walking with a limp and has the cane, probably damaged in that attack that he hasn't recovered from, has become more embittered and now understands like we need to fight or we need to do whatever it has to take, So they find an unwitting ally there in Seth, which may be an indication that they may not be on the right side of this particular thing, depending on how you view Seth. So, but Ellie's speech is fantastic, and for two reasons. One, because it's very well delivered by Bella Ramsey, because she's playing a really difficult thing, which is she knows she's not fully telling the truth, but she's trying to convince people in the room that she's telling the truth, and that's a very tough job to do as an actor. Where it's like when you're a really great singer singing off key on purpose, it's not easy. Your tendency is to go to the believability. But I also think what was interesting about it, which is the second reason, is that I think halfway through the speech, Bella Ramsey may have been playing this note with Ellie that she is kind of believing a little bit of it as she's saying it, because especially the community part, the camera, Peter Hoare put the camera right on her face. I think there is a possibility here that Ellie hasn't factored in that she is part of a community, and that saying it here is maybe starting to dawn on her that there are people to care about, there are people to fight for, and that element of Joel is not alive anymore. That element of Joel died with him, protecting the community. Will Ellie honor Joel not just by seeking revenge, but by also taking his place in trying to uplift and help the community and do things for the community? Because from what we've seen of Ellie so far, she's very much like, yes, she'll talk to you, but she's very much keeping to herself, and she's very judgmental. Yes, she was with Seth. Even when Seth brings her a rifle in a little bit, she's not fully 100% forgiving him. So you have that element of her, and I just wonder if during the speech there is a realization of the things she's saying, because she wrote the speech. So did she write it just to placate people, or is she writing it because she really believes, or she's starting to believe some of it, or somewhere inside of herself, which I think is an interesting thing to consider. So later, Tommy, and as I meant, let's get to this conversation. We got to talk about this, because Tommy and Gail are sitting on that beer cooler, her in her chair. She's had 2 full beers already and is working on her third there, as we see. And then, Tommy walks up and they have this back and forth about the direction that Ellie is going in. He says he's worried that Ellie's walking the same paths as Joel. And Gail says she was already moving in that direction, and that nurture is only a little bit of in helping someone's nature or guiding someone's nature. And when Tommy's supremely expresses even more concern because he says to her, you're a person who sees other things that other people don't see. She says some people just can't be saved. And so I find that to be an interesting back and forth between the two of them. What do you make of this back and forth here, Shane?
Well, again, Catherine O'Hara, we're so used to Moira Rose, Beetlejuice, the Christopher Guest films. We're used to funny Catherine O'Hara. I mean, granted, especially in the Christopher Guest films, there's a little bit of darkness in those, but for the most part, she delivers a humorous performance. And getting to see her be funny at the beginning when she's watching the game and she's like, "All right, let's go." Oh shit, something clearly happened to one of those kids. But Tommy basically saying, "Oh, you're a fan," of the fact that she used to have Tigers season tickets.
Right. Yes.
Season tickets for the Tigers. I was like, that's a great little morsel of just character again. And my guess is that, oh shit, wasn't in the script. That was something they're like, hey, just cheer him on, and Gabriel's gonna come in. So watching that comedic moment, I was like, oh, that's again a nice little pressure release.
Yeah.
The thing that really struck me is when they're talking about Ellie and she calls her a liar. And Tommy says, well, there's a difference between someone who lied and someone who's a liar. And she's like, yeah, there is. That's a liar. Like the fact that the entire speech of Ellie's, Catherine O'Hara is calling bullshit. She's like, she didn't believe that. She is saying whatever she can to get some people on her side so she can achieve her goal of avenging Joel. And as they're making the comparisons, I mean, I love that argument of, you know, nurture is about 5% to nature's 95%. Like, because we've definitely talked about that with people. Like, if this person were in a different situation, you know, do they turn out differently? And her basically saying, this is who Ellie is. Did Joel steer her in a particular direction? Yeah, she's probably going to go that way anyways. Right. And then the whole idea of her as the therapist. A therapist needs therapy as well, and there is no one that she can unload all this stuff to. So what she does is drown it in beer and marijuana. So having that interplay between them, did we need it? Not necessarily, but was it really nice to watch? Yes. And my guess is that because they did have that scene in there, it is going to be paid off in some respect.
Yeah, I've got a lot of questions. You know, you mentioned Dina, possibly. There's some suspicions here. I think Jesse, what's Jesse's ulterior motives? I think there's much more going on behind Jesse than we think. And then the situation with Tommy and Gail, which I think is something to consider, as I mentioned earlier. And the lying thing is a great thing for you to bring up here, man, because we saw her lie to Gail in essence and say whatever she needed to say to Gail to get out of that hospital room, right? And I wonder if her calling her a liar is, again, Gail's anger at her over the Eugene situation and the guilty face that Ellie made last episode when Jesse was bringing up the Eugene. Did Ellie make up something about Eugene to get herself out of trouble, and that caused Joel to kill him? That's what I wonder. And I know I might be, paddling towards Hayward Island again, but there's something really interesting about the Gail situation. And I'll throw another thing in here because when we'll get to the cult, but remember, we see the cult people walking through the woods. What do they say about the prophet? They say that the prophet sees truths hidden from others and shares the truth no matter what the cost is. So the fact that Tommy said, you see things that other people don't, and he's basically saying that the prophet sees things that other people don't, like, there's just something here where there's a little danger around Gail that I think the show is hinting at, because I don't think there's Gail in the game, or there's no therapy scenes in the game here with Joel. So is this a situation?
I believe they said Gail was a new character. Yeah.
Right. So I wonder if Gail is someone from within to watch here because of the Eugene situation, which we keep getting hinted at. And I hope we get payoffs, but her to be so willing to just banish Ellie to the liar pile with no redemption and say some people just can't be redeemed. Is that her saying that I'm never going to forgive her for what she did that caused the death of the man I love? I don't know, but my mind is starting to, the wheels are starting to turn on this situation. So we'll see what happens with that. Am I off base? Maybe I'm crazy, but I'm just throwing it out there.
I mean, now that you're saying it, does this sound like
Yeah.
a Hayward Island theory that maybe Gail is the prophet who's been gone for 10 years, who died 10 years? Maybe Gail escaped.
Oh
I don't think
shit!
that's.
I didn't even go that
I don't
far.
think that's it.
I didn't even go that far, but
if
I
we
love
get
it.
a close up, if we get a close-up shot of Gail and we see 2 scars right here on the sides of her cheeks, I don't think that's going to happen. But I do think it's interesting that someone who has suffered a loss, like losing Eugene, the circumstances of which, what we're led to believe is that Eugene got infected, Joel had to kill him.
Right.
That is what we are led to believe. No one is explicitly saying this.
Right.
That is what we are led to believe.
Right.
And again, having no knowledge of the game, it's kind of like, it is always very tempting, but to kind of like, oh, so what does this actually mean? But that's also how I found out about Joel 3 years ago. So I was like, all right, maybe don't go to the internet anymore. But I do think it's interesting that someone who is who has no bandwidth left, that she would say some people can't be saved in regards to talking about this kid. Like, I do think that I do think that is an interesting thing for a therapist to admit to someone. And granted, these are very, very different times that they are literally living in the end times. But it is a little defeatist. I feel like that might violate their oath that they take to be like, well, this one can't be saved.
Yeah. I just think there's something coming with Gail and Ellie down the road here to reveal everything that happened with Eugene. It's going to be a hell of a reveal if it does happen. All right, let's move on to this. Ellie and Dina are now on their own, riding through. Oh, no, sorry. Ellie is making plans to take off to go after the wolves. Dina comes in and she has the map. She has the supply list that they need and calls out to Ellie for being stupid, for thinking that she can ride this whole way on Chucks, and says she needs boots. And we find out that as they take off at 3 a.m. in the morning, that the person who's been helping Dina get all the stuff on the supply and getting the horse out of the barn there or the stalls was Seth. And Seth hands his rifle, which is a quote unquote better rifle, to Ellie as they head out. So, we got to find out what happened in those 3 months for Seth to want to help them in this situation. But then they take off riding. And as I said, it's an 870-mile trip from Jackson Hole, Wyoming to Seattle. They make inside jokes about Viper and something like this, and make comments about this. They get caught in the rain in a tent. They discuss Dina's kissing skills and her returning to Jesse. And then they run into the band of travelers in this cult that we had seen earlier, who had been talking about, the scars on their faces, but they'd been talking about a prophet. They had the father and daughter leading them. They've communicated with whistles. He gave his daughter a hammer, but promises the distance they're traveling will keep her even safer from the war they're fleeing. And the last we see of them is them doing the whistles, and there's an attack from the wolves. And then Dina and Ellie stumble upon their dead bodies with flies all over it. And then eventually they make it to Seattle. But we see Danny Ramirez up there looking around at things, and then we see the real size of the troops and the job ahead of them with armored tanks. And I mean, this is a massive, massive force. Very reminiscent, I think, of when they went to Pittsburgh last season, I think, Joel and Ellie. So there's a lot they're having to overcome in this situation. So what do you think of these scenes here with them having a conversation before they left, dealing with Seth, and then everything that happened on the road leading us to the final scene of the episode?
I mean, finding out that Dina's, guy on the ground, getting them all of the necessary supplies is the guy that, called them dykes 3 months ago. I mean, you do hope that there has been some sort of personal progression for Seth, and that this isn't some ploy to like, aha, my ultimate revenge. Like, I'm sending you out to go get killed. It doesn't seem like that, but I do think it was funny that he said that he had planned on going with them had he not been a victim of friendly fire. And Ellie saying, are you sure it was friendly? Like, I think who shot you meant to shoot you.
Basically, yeah.
Watching them bonding, going through the alphabet, coming up with musical acts.
Yeah.
like Frank Zappa and Guns N' Roses. Again, it's that sort of bonding that Joel and Ellie did in the first
Yeah.
season. That
Yeah.
I mean, and granted, Ellie and Dina are in. It's a very different relationship, but you see
Yeah.
just
Much more equal.
the
Yeah.
yeah, well, and they're just like getting to know each other on a different level.
Mhm.
Um, that moment in the tent where they are discussing Dina's kissing skills,
Yeah.
like, you know, you don't want to give too many compliments right at the beginning, especially when she's basically said, I'm back with Jesse, but I'm just curious,
Right.
how did I do it? I'm like, all right, well, I'm not going to stroke your ego too much. There's
Yeah.
nothing in this for me. Them getting to Seattle, like it was really interesting when the quintet, the Abbey quintet, got to Jackson, and it's like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
town, like it's a city. And
Yeah.
then you see what they've turned Seattle. Like if Jackson is a city,
Right.
Seattle looks like a military base.
Yes.
And
100%.
the idea that Dina was the one in that conversation at the beginning of the episode, I'm guessing that we've not heard a whole lot about the Western Liberation Front. My
Yeah.
guess is that there aren't enough of them that we couldn't take. So Dina
Mm.
again is the one who is leading them into
Yeah.
this, or rather providing enough breadcrumbs to Ellie to be like, this is what we should go do.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Ellie was probably going to do it regardless,
Mhm.
but the idea that they were trying to get more of the town to come with them, those 16 people, they would have been toast. I mean, at least the two of them,
Yeah.
there's a chance that they can sneak in. The larger your force, the more you stand out.
Right. Right.
So again, like I'm probably barking up the wrong tree right now, being like, there's something going on with Dina. But the fact that she is the one who has kind of perpetrated this whole thing, and granted, the coming attractions, the preview for next week's episode, where we see her in tears pointing a gun at
Yeah.
Ellie. Again, in the previews, they are making us see what they want us to see.
Right.
they
Right.
they
Right.
want us to have these conversations that we're having right now. So the likelihood
Right.
that this is true is probably not very high. But I do
Yeah. And
think
it
it.
could, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go
Sorry.
ahead. Go ahead, Johnny.
I think it might be because she got bit, and so because she doesn't know that Ellie's immune, I don't think, and so she might be wanting to shoot her to save her from having that kind of death. And so Ellie's got to reveal to her once and for all that she's, she's immune to the bites and what have you. But I don't know what the C may be from the next week. But yeah, I like, again, I like this chemistry between them. It's two young up and coming actresses. They have such an easy chemistry with each other, such a respect for each other. I've watched some videos this week of them doing interviews and stuff. It's very natural, their respect and affection for each other. It's ironic because when you watch the videos, Bella's very much the alpha to Isabella's a little more less alpha. But when you're watching the show, they're very much equals, in how they interact. And I think it's a new energy, a new element to throw into this show. We'd had the father-daughter. Now we've got the two friends who are rolling through, creating, as you said, their own kind of inside language. They're doing little things to pass the time. But also what's really interesting, and this is another character beat that advances the character of Ellie. Dina, when she sees all these dead bodies, throws up, right? So if she's working with the wolves, I don't know, or what's going on there. It's some questions that she would react to it this way. But this also could be part of the act that she's reacting this way to throw up and what have you. But Ellie, when she walks right into it. She's not phased by all these dead bodies. We see the young girl. What Ellie does and takes from that scene is exactly what Joel would take, which is, look what they did. They even killed the kids. We have even more reason to kill these people. We have even more. We're doing the right thing. Whatever the question may be, whatever the council brought up in that meeting about, like, we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't do that. I'm even more determined now to go and get vengeance because righteousness is on my side. So it's going to be curious how that affects Ellie and Dina as this mission keeps going in their approach to things. And is there anyone who is going to come up after them, like Jesse or someone else, or Tommy, who's going to ride out and follow them to Seattle to see if they're okay? It's going to be a lot of questions on that. But I like the interaction. I like the chemistry. It's very natural. In the tent's very sweet. All of that is cool. But the death of those cult members, I think, is a harbinger of doom of what might be coming for them when they take on the wolves there in Seattle. And that, I mean, seeing that tank roll through, seeing those armored vehicles roll through, that's unsettling shit. You didn't really see that in Jackson, right? You saw them with the high forts and they'd be able to shoot down, but an armored vehicle like this, they were using like construction vehicles. This is an armored vehicle, it's a whole nother ball game, and those massive guns on top, man. It is not a joke, you know. So it's an interesting moment to end this episode on. Anything more you want to say that we missed? Anything more you want to hit on, Shannon, or talk about?
I think mainly I'm just so curious where the show is going to go. And this is one of the advantages of having not played the game, because they did say, Mazin and Druckmann did say that this episode serves as a bridge between the Jackson and Seattle portions of the game. So, in terms of gameplay, like we're going to be following Ellie to see how things play out. Have we seen the last of Jackson? Have we seen the last of Tommy and Maria and the rest of the town? Right. I mean, maybe. Right. Again, those of you who have played the game who are shaking your heads at us right now, don't say anything in the comments because we don't know where it's going. Right. But I hope, but at the same time, I hope we haven't seen the end of them, because I feel like there are some unanswered questions. Like I would love to find out more about this, about Gail's husband, Eugene. I would love to find out a little bit more of what actually transpired. But it's certainly possible that Jackson is permanently in the rearview mirror, and from here on in, it is the vengeance of Ellie that we're following. But again, I love an episode like this, and they earned this episode after the phenomenal action sequences that we got in the episode prior.
I think we're heading to war between Jackson Hole and Seattle. That's what I think is going to happen here. Is that although, man, traveling 870 miles just to go to battle with another town, I think is a lot. But it seems like we're setting up, like we've got a fortress and then we've got a military compound. Well, how is this going to go down? But it seems like what Ellie might do here and Dina might do here is to spark a war between the wolves and the people of Jackson Hole. So we may not see them for a couple episodes, but I wonder if it'll lead to some final battle in the 7th episode of the season where we see them go at each other and what have you. So a lot of curiosity on my end. But I do want to say one last thing we didn't talk about. This was a beautiful moment of her going to visit Joel's grave. This was a nice moment of catharsis for us who are fans of PEDRO PASCAL's performance and the loss of Joel. So as I said, the whole episode dealt with the loss of Joel, but this is the really poignant moment that I thought was beautifully shot and beautifully staged. What did you think of this moment, Jen? Do you like this kind of goodbye that she gives to Joel here?
Yeah, my guess is that is straight out of the game, because
probably
kind of just gorgeous cinematography. I mean, it's a quick moment. Like that is definitely the type of thing you see in a cinematic in between levels of passing of the torch from Joel to Ellie. But yeah, I mean, I'll miss PEDRO PASCAL. Like I thought he was phenomenal in this role, and he needed some free time to go be Reed Richards, I guess.
and 5 million other things, including a Mando and Grogu movie. All right, well, there you go. That's our spoiler review. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us here. Of course, we missed Michael Vogel, but he'll be back for our main show later on this week and continuing the reviews here of The Last of Us on this Geek Bite here. Shannon, what do we have to tell them for the people who are watching and listening to us?
Yeah, I'd like to follow us on social media. On Twitter, it's at Geek_Buddies. On Instagram, at _Geek_Buddies. If you'd like to follow me on social media, on Twitter, it's at Shannon_McClung. On Instagram, it's Shannon the Geek Buddy. If you'd like to tell Michael Vogel you hope he feels better, you can find him at MKToon. If you'd like to tell Johnny Rocha, hey, glad you're here, it's at the Rocha Says.
And Shannon McClung at Shannon_McClung, of course, is so important. And there's all the things that you need to do. Please remember to subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do. We also have a podcast feed. I have to keep encouraging you all. Please subscribe to the podcast feed. If you download the episodes and you've already watched us, you don't want to listen to it, it's just the downloads that count. So we would appreciate you all subscribing so that they automatically download to your account. We're trying to get those numbers up in the more of the bigger thousands so we can start attracting more sponsors here for the show. And for those of you who listen to us on the podcast feed, please make sure you patronize the sponsors if those products are products that you're interested in, and use our code to do so. All right. For my partner, Shannon McClung, I am John Rocha. Thanks so much for joining us on a new episode of Geek Bite, brought to you by the
Geek Buddies!